Starting the show with our hashtag Africa Focus feature. If you're new to the show, this is the part of the show where we focus on the biggest stories on the African continent. And this time around, we'll be heading over to West Africa, Nigeria specifically, where there's a long insurgency that is entering a new phase. In recent weeks, there's been coordinated and increasingly sophisticated attacks by Boko Haram and the so-called Islamic State West Africa Province, ISWAP for short. And it has raised, I think, fresh concerns about the resilience of the country's security architecture, from the daily raids on villages to direct assaults on military bases. Analysts say armed groups are no longer just surviving, they're seemingly adapting. And it's concerning because there was a time where the rest of the continent thought Nigeria has dealt with the threat that was Boko Haram, ISWAP, and other insurgent terrorist organizations. And there are growing indications that some of these groups are identifying and exploiting gaps, remote outposts, intelligence failures, and overstretched troops within Nigeria's defense force. And in some cases, simultaneously or near simultaneous attacks that suggest a very, very high level of planning that is forcing some sort of a rethink for Nigeria's counterinsurgency strategy and the units that they have. And the stakes are really high, man. It's been quite a long time, more than a decade, if I'm not mistaken, of conflict against these groups that is claimed thousands and thousands of lives and displaced hundreds of thousands, and also other thousands that have disappeared. And we asked the question on whether or not the balance is shifting once again and shifting in favor of some of these insurgent groups. And we're going to be unpacking all of that with Nigerian-based journalist Imam Shuaib to help us unpack what's driving this resurgence and whether the military is being systematically maneuvered here, which would be a very concerning state of affairs. Imam, Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate you giving us your time this morning.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Good morning from Nigeria. It's my pleasure to be with you this morning.
No, the pleasure is all ours. And I want to jump right into it. I want to start with what we're currently seeing right now. These new fresh waves of attacks, they don't look like isolated incidences. Do they point us to what looks like a coordinated shift in strategy by Boko Haram and ISWAP? Have they almost adapted to, the reality of the day and also some of the shortcomings of Nigeria's counter-insurgency, counter-terrorism units and Nigeria's military?
Okay, from what we see, even though we may not conclude that they are adapting, indicators are pointing to the fact that there is a renewed and an improved system of operation by these criminal gangs of ISWAP and Boko Haram. The recent developments in their operation indicates or shows that they are more daring now than they used to be. It is moving from isolated attack to a face-off or attack on military bases and infrastructures as a result of maybe systemic failure or lack of intelligence coordination and intelligence sharing. In the recent time, we find the insurgents attacking military bases, and the most disturbing part of it or aspect of it is that we see them attacking military bases and killing top military officers from lieutenant colonel up. In the recent time, we find brigadier generals being attacked, like it was the case in Beni Sheikh, Meduguri, and Monguno. We see from colonel upward, rednecks being attacked and killed by this insurgency. So it's a really disturbing development, like pointing indicators that they are trying to adapt. This is not about isolated attacks again.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing concerning element to this is from what I've read and the reports that are coming out is the fact that there seems to be simultaneous attacks or near simultaneous attacks. Does this suggest a growing collaboration between some of these groups and these factions that have historically been rivals, or have been breakaways from each other?
Yeah, essentially, war is about strategy. And the strategy they adopt is how to win the war. And when to win the war, sometimes they collaborate, sometimes they go their individual ways. But indicators are now that they are regrouping and they are trying to collaborate to get more attention and expand their operation beyond the northeast to cover northwest and some part of neighboring countries. So indicators are that there's some sort of collaboration between them because this simultaneous attack cannot just operate in isolation. It's a well coordinated and planned attack through collaboration between this terrorist organization.
And they seem to be also targeting, or maybe deliberately targeting what would be perceived as soft military targets of some sort, soft military positions, because you mentioned that there are some top army officials that have been killed because they've been attacking these remote bases and some of the under-resourced outposts. Is this another kind of emerging trend that we're seeing here?
Yes, like I mentioned earlier, this is a new style or a trend that we never knew before. Because essentially, this is new administration or government is their pattern of handling insurgency is different from what we have in the previous administration. If you could recall, around 2015, 2016, of course, these insurgents were highly decimated and they were almost defeated. And most of the areas or local governments that were under their control were recovered by the military when former President Muhammad Buhari came to power. But what we see now is that the terrorists are becoming more daring. They are becoming, more coordinated by attacking military bases. Instead of, the military taking the wars to them, we see the insurgents taking the war to the military bases. And indicators are that they are getting upper hand because when you attack military bases and you kill generals, you kill colonels, it's an indication that the terrorists are getting upper hands, over the military. So this is a new style they have adopted, and I think they have identified a loophole in the system or some shortcomings in the area of commitment to fighting insurgents, and that's why they have the infantry to attack military bases, and this uh, raise a lot of questions about either poor intelligence gathering or poor intelligence sharing or the military approach to it, because this insurgency keeps changing their pattern, changing their tactics of attack and operations, and our military keeps falling for it, and they keep failing in terms of attacking. Because when insurgents attack military bases, it makes a very loud statement because it indicates that the military are actually having some shortcomings or are having some laxity, and that is why the insurgents are exploiting it. And each time they attack, you will see that military have serious casualties in which top military officers are being killed. So this is a serious concern. This is a serious problem, and the military needs to step up their game and then see how they can be able to attack this issue from the root and uproot it.
Mm. I want us to take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to touch on what actually went wrong, because you referenced 2015 and the former President Buhari. That's when he came out and mentioned to Nigerians and to the whole world that Boko Haram has defeated. They are now null and void. But fast forward a few years after that, we're seeing this resurgence. I want to touch on what's behind it. In those years leading up to now, what went wrong when it comes to dealing with the threat of Boko Haram, and what could be done better to get back to a point where they're insolvent and they're technically, defeated. But I think we'll touch on that after the break because it's a very, very important point, and I hope you stay with us.
Operation Kurbani, Maulana Timor will once again be taking a trip abroad for Kurbani. Many people in the villages live well below the poverty line and only eat meat on the days of Eid al-Adha. Support this cause at 2,170 Rand for 7 shares or 310 Rand per share. Contact Maulana Timor Maulana Sajjad, Maulana Hamad, or Maulana Abbad on 011 852 6324 or 072 299 9268 or 082 368 6866 or 072 697 0131 or 073 576 9786. All slaughtering will be supervised by a team of foreign and local ulama. Visit www.operationqurbani.org.za.
You South African, of course. You anxious about the future. We've got you covered. Build on your wealth portfolio with Randry Jewelers Gold Coin Exchange. Visit us at 151 Stephen Dlamini Road, Musgrave, Durban. Or
your true home away from home. Al Bayt is the ideal heaven for families, business people, and tourists with its 4-star family rooms and other luxurious facilities. Conveniently situated close to Port Elizabeth Airport, the beach, and other amenities. Your stay will be truly unforgettable as you'll be taking home lasting memories of the warm hospitality, the serenity and tranquility that Al Bayt has to offer. For reservations, call 041 583 6415. or visit www.albaytlodge.co.za.
Africa. Give the gift of clean water with Africa Muslims Agency. With every water well or borehole you donate, your drop becomes a river, reconnecting communities to nourishment, education, dignity and empowerment. Sponsor a water well for 17,000 Rand in Africa or a borehole for 65,000 Rand in Afghanistan or Africa. Quench the thirst. Reconnect the soul with Africa Muslims Agency.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makudi. The time is 8:33 Central African time, and we're still having our hashtag focus feature this time around, looking at the situation in Nigeria and this recent resurgence of Boko Haram and ISWAP. And we're trying to put back the layers. We're trying to understand the new strategies that these organizations have in store. The most important for me is that after, former President Buhari mentioned that technically defeated, this was back in 2015, we thought we would see the end of it, but years later, it looks like they've recouped, gotten, new release live. And now I want to, get, some to where we currently are and what would be done to mitigate this threat that is Boko Haram. And we're still talking to Nigerian-based journalist Imam Shuaib, give us a bit more insight on that. Imam, thank you so much for joining us. And before we went to the break, the resurgence of Boko Haram, that's been typically to where we currently find ourselves now. What do you think went wrong? Imam, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. So essentially, like I mentioned earlier, that in 2015, when the then administration of President Muhammadu Buhari came in, there was this political will and serious commitment in terms of fighting the insurgency. One, the top military officers were reorganized. new ones were recruited and some were deployed. Secondly, the budget for security was increased above $1 trillion naira, and then there is improvement in training and provision of facilities or tools or weapons to the military, and the president gave them encouragement and the necessary support to be able to fight the insurgents. As a result of this, we saw improvement in terms of fighting the insurgency. Of course, about 12 local governments were there about under Boko Haram in state like Borno were recovered from the insurgents. And that brought about improvement because the political will was there and the commitment was there by the president beyond just the noise and playing politics with security. But what we see today, the reality on ground actually points to the direction that the military should do better now, because there is more collaboration with the United States now, and there is more intelligence sharing now better. So there are improved situations. But what we see is contrary to the result we expected, and this is not far from the following reason. Number one, if you get support from the United States to fight insurgency, they can only grant you support. They can grant you training, but they cannot fight for you. You have to fight it yourself. You have to deploy the resources. So if the government is not committed and the military are not committed to deploying, or the government providing the necessary tools or support or weapons to the military, there is nothing they can make, or there is no difference. And this is why we see failure in the area of the military, by the insurgents becoming daring and they are attacking military bases. Two, if there is intelligence, gathering, intelligence sharing, it must be backed up with proactive, measures. If you have intelligence, your response to intelligence report or intelligence information will determine whether the intelligence report will be useful to you or not. Time is of essence in military intelligence and operations. So what time did you get the information or intelligence report? What time did you act? Do you have to wait for approval from the top or not? So these issues and related issues and the operational metrics also, you cannot be using 20th century tools in the 21st century to fight 21st century insurgents. So if this approach has not changed, and we see that somehow there is a dwindling allocation to the military budget. We see the government, living a superfluous life, buying yachts, rebuilding houses for the vice president, and so on. So there is a diversion of the funds from areas of priority. So the government keeps borrowing in the name of reviving the economy and boosting the economy. But if insurgency persists, there will be no foreign direct investment. People will be, discouraged from investing. There will be food crisis, and these are factors that give room for the terrorists to operate freely. So if there is no approach, intelligence gathering and the use of intelligence reports at the appropriate time, this will not make any difference, no matter how much you have spent on the military resources or how much intelligence you have. Proactiveness is important, and this we see that it's not is lacking in terms of the military's response to issues. Also, we can also okay.
Yes, no. I think you're touching on very, very important point, because that was my next question. The morale and the resources that are available to the Nigerian military. How critical of an issue has that become within the army forces? And is this a direct impact of that? The fact that the army is not well resourced, and with that comes low morale amongst the troops, obviously.
Sure, we can see that what was actually budgeted for the military last year was around 1.4 billion naira or thereabout, but what was actually allocated to the military to fight the incidents was less than 1 billion naira. So you see that they are grossly underfunded, and once you are grossly underfunded, war is not like Mao Zedong will say, it's not a dinner party. So war is not a dinner party. Mao Zedong said revolution is not a dinner party. It's about huge expenditure to procure weapons, to procure intelligence gathering, and to do other logistics that is required to fight war. So if they are underfunded, there is no way, no matter how committed they are, you cannot, you cannot fight insurgents that have latest weapons, that have the commitment. They are fighting to die, and you are fighting to protect your territory. There is no way you can match them, except if you have superior power, except if you have superior way of gathering intelligence and proactiveness. I still insist, if you have intelligence, but what is the time of your response to that intelligence? Do you have to wait for approval from the top or from the defense headquarters before you act, while your units or military bases are being attacked? So we have to change this pattern, and only if we change this pattern, we can be able to find win this war.
And let's talk about geography here. Is the conflict still largely contained to the northeast of Nigeria, or are we seeing a geographic spread into new regions that traditionally didn't have the threat of ISWAP and Boko Haram and the likes?
Now, essentially, their stronghold is the northeast, but of course we can see the resurgence of banditry in northwestern Nigeria and north central Nigeria. And there is one thing with criminal gangs: there is always collaboration, there is always intelligence sharing, and there is always a way of working together. So essentially, the northwest, the north central, as well as the northeast are all ravaged by either banditry or terrorism in its different form. So, and we cannot rule out collaboration between them, because we find out that in the history of the Boko Haram, they are fond of kidnapping people and getting resources. They are fond of robbery to get food stuff and logistics, other logistics, to be able to fund their criminal activities. So we see collaboration between them, and then we see expansion beyond the territory of northeast to northwest, as well as north central, which is latest on the table.
Very, very worrying. I want to talk about the civilian impact here, because civilians are the ones that continue to bear the brunt of all of these killings and the abductions that you speak about. They're the ones that are forced to, run away and essentially become displaced people. Are communities on the ground losing faith in the state's ability to protect them at this stage?
It's obvious that when terrorists move or graduate from attacking soft targets like civilians to attacking military infrastructure, of course the implication is better imagined that mentioned, because if the incidents have graduated from attacking soft targets and they are attacking the military that are supposed to protect the people, this have raised a question on the capability and the trust that the civilians they have on the military that is supposed to protect them. Secondly, we see that we have this insurgency have touched the economy of the masses, of the general populace, because they are thrown into food insecurity and food crisis. They cannot more go to farm, they cannot more carry out their legal activities or businesses. They cannot longer. Just some few weeks ago, we see that the military attacked a market. They say mistake. Military mishap, and they attacked a market in Yobe State. So this and other related factors are indicators that the people are losing confidence in the military to be able to protect, because those who are expected to protect you, if they are mistakenly killing you, it shows brings about concern on the operational mechanisms of the military. And then we have food crisis. People cannot go to farm. People cannot carry out their economic activities, and then individuals that are supposed to be living with their families in their respective homes have been thrown into military IDP camps, internally displaced people's camp. So this and other factors have actually been affecting the psychology and the existence and corporate existence of the general populace. And of course, it's a serious concern. The government needs to wake up to this.
I want to touch on, the regional and international dimension here. I remember of this multinational joint task force. I think it included countries like Benin, Cameroon, and then Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken. What role are they playing here? Is it an effective organization? Is it gaining any kind of ground? Just give us a bit more insight on that.
Essentially, there has to be, collaboration between these countries I have mentioned. But as it is, there is a crack because Niger has left ECOWAS, the neighboring country of Nigeria. They have left ECOWAS, so that collaboration have collapsed. As a result of
Mm,
this, and coupled with weak border, patrol, the border is very large and expansive, and there is no control mechanism to check the inflow and outflow of insurgents in the country. It has also affected the collaboration because if you are mounting military check here or to avoid or to stop insurgents from accessing your country. 300 kilometers away, 200 kilometers away, there is another kangaroo route that they can assist, they can access, your country. So essentially, with the, some African countries pulling out of ECOWAS, it has also affected their performance. And then this weak border patrol, lack of commitment or resources to commit to this border patrol has also been making, this multinational joint task force be weak in recent days.
mm, mm. Imam, just before I let you go, because I think you covered a lot of bases, just to wrap it all up, are we looking at a temporary escalation here, or a deeper structural failure in Nigeria's counterinsurgency approach? And crucially, what would it take to reverse the momentum we're seeing now that is can be done now? It's not a long-term kind of investment, but it's a short-term kind of mitigating factor that can be put in place to make sure that you don't have continued rise and increase in these attacks in the short
First,
term.
the government must increase its political will and commitment to fighting insurgency. There is no investment that will thrive if there is insurgency. Economy cannot grow if there is insurgency. The government must, provide for the military and allocate the resources transparently to the military, the resources they need and in number that they need, and show commitment to fighting this insurgent. The government must recruit more, personnel to fight this insurgent because as it is, the northwest is taken by the bandits, the northeast is taken by the Boko Haram, and the north central is also taken over by the bandits are making impact there too. So we need to recruit more personnel to be able to mount them and face this insurgency because as it is, the military is overwhelmed because of the dimension of the insurgency, and that's why when you give attention to northwest, they will come back to northeast and attack. As you are running back to northeast again, and then they will divert to north central, and this has been the pattern. We can see, the new phase of insurgency, or in terms of banditry from Kebbi, to Niger, to Borgu, to New Busa, and around the Kahenji Dam, and so on. It's another pattern of the operation of this bandits. So we need to recruit more people. We need to be transparent in our procurement process. We ensure that we give the military the needed weapons in terms of quality and in terms of quantity. We give them the number of relevant weapons and in number that they need. We need to recruit more military, and we need to encourage this military that are laying their life for the corporate existence of Nigeria, to encourage them, support their family so that we can boost their morale and encourage them to fight insurgents.
There you go, Nigeria-based journalist Imam Shuaib. Jazakallah so much for joining us. Always a pleasure having you on air. Really appreciate you giving us the time.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be with you too.
Really appreciate it. And there we go. With that, we've come to the end of our hashtag Africa Focus feature. Wrapping up, I think, a very concerning state of affairs, looking at Boko Haram and its splinter faction, ISWAP, who have recently escalated attacks in the northeastern part of Nigeria, targeting military bases and villages. Essentially, this time around, taking the war to the Nigerian military. And they've done this in various states, including Borno, Adamawa State. And recently, in the past month, incidences included killing of over 20 people in village raids and a military attack that resulted in the death of a senior army officer. And it's really concerning, scary to think. Just 15 years ago, former President Buhari mentioned that they've been technically defeated and they've seemingly gotten a new lease of life. And it'll be interesting to see how the Nigerian army and the government deal with this new threat, because they've evolved. They are now targeting the army of Nigeria. Going to take a quick break. News and views continues after this.